Leanne, welcome to the show. Let's jump into the fast question. Solopreneur or firm?
Solo.
Culture, hard ass or soft touch?
I like to think hard ass, but definitely soft touch.
What's one secret to better meeting?
Book in less time than you think you might need.
Why?
Because time is elastic and a lot of decisions are made in the last 7 minutes.
Right.
There's a lot of just waffle that goes on for an hour when you could have had a 30-minute meeting or had it done within 23 minutes.
Leanne, welcome to the show. I thought we'd start by you telling us a little bit about your business and what you do, because you do a lot to make businesses better. So yeah, tell us like what is, what you do to make them better.
So super broad. Yeah. So I guess I started my business with a background in learning and development. I'm really interested in group dynamics. I used to play netball and I was playing it for a lot longer than I should have because I enjoyed the social element aspects of it, the teamwork, seeing what performance was. So what my business does is I sort of partner with organisations, with leaders of teams, and also with founders. And I really just sort of challenge what they're doing in terms of growing their business, their group dynamics with the people within their teams. And I guess what I want to do, and I don't want this to sound like MAGA, but I like to make work great again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
The teamwork vibe is really interesting. So explore that. Like, how did you come from netball and enjoying that teamwork? Because I've always had this view that people who've played in teams are different in businesses. And if you experience team sports and hierarchies and how that works, how that ends up, and some businesses get it wrong and they become like the wrong kind of team sport environment. But yeah, how did that develop for you?
Yeah, I think I just really enjoy the social element, and I perform better when I'm with other people. And I'm running at the moment, and my speeds are extremely slow. I know the answer to that is to join a running group, but I actually even don't want to challenge myself. I just enjoy running on my own. But I think when you do it well, you actually perform so much better than you could have than if you were a solo. It's when you play a better tennis player, you automatically improve. I think the interesting thing about organisations is they call people that report to the same manager a team, but it's not really a team. It's more so a committee. They've got sort of similar goals, but they're not actually working together. Like on a netball court, you need a wing attack. Everyone has their own position. They've got important things to do, like a production line. That's a team. So I think the definition of team kind of can let some teams down within organisations when they think they're something that they're really not. But for me, I just love like the social element of it. A lot of people say, back to work, what is attractive about employment is if you can say that you have a best friend at work, you're really going to enjoy what you do as well. And that was the same for me. The teams that we performed well, we got along. I'm not to say that it was all sort of rainbows and butterflies. You had to work through some conflict. You're fighting for positions on court. But I think it was a really great learning curve in terms of accountability, stepping up, making sure that you're committed as well.
So you're in business for yourself, but what's your background? How did you get there?
Yeah, I studied psychology and human resources at university, but actually it's interesting, I used to work down the road from where we're filming in a crazy organisation called Wicked Camper Vans. Right. So I was in a marketing role there, and that's where I learned a lot about this. I talk about evangelism a lot, word of mouth marketing. We did a lot of guerrilla marketing. We've got lawsuits every week for the lawyers in your audience that are listening. You probably sent us one or two. We got in a lot of trouble, but we created a stir. And back in 2007, 2008, we were YouTubing, we were blogging all the way back then. And so I just, I guess the difference that I bring in terms of the learning and development and the HR side of things is a marketing approach to it, because right now it is about how do you gather attention, and I think influence and marketing are very closely related in terms of your brand, your reputation and things like that. So that was what I studied. I've always been the person in a workshop that would answer the question first, sitting at the front of the room, and I got a point where I was going to workshops and thinking, I think I can run this. And the opportunity came about working for a big mining organisation. At the time, the commodity price was really low. So we had no budget. Yeah. So me, the internal person, I was asked to fly to Mongolia, Canada, all around the world, running leadership training. Right. And I'd never done it before. Yeah. So I had an incident in Canada where it just went terrible. It was awful. The workshop was terrible. I was jet lagged. Again, this was the first gig. Jet lagged. I think there were 30 male supervisors in the room. And then poor old me. Anyway, on the first day, one of the guys just refused to participate in an activity. And I was like, how do I bring this back? Then this next person just refused as well. So the workshop, we call that derailing a workshop. Anyway, I got back to Australia and I rang up all my facilitation friends and said, what would you have done? And so that kind of led into the podcast as well. And yeah, sort of built an audience while I was working at this organisation. Like I said, I went to all these great countries. After I got to Mongolia, brought back the Chinggis vodka. I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. Let's try this. Let's see if I can do this on my own.
Yeah, amazing. So what was that first year or two like?
I treated it like an employee. Like I gave myself set hours. I was like, I'm going to work, same hours as before. My goal was just to meet my revenue target. So that was what I was going in for. And I thought I'd be very happy being a person that just delivered workshops and everyone else's content. I had no aspirations to be a thought leader or author. I was just happy just to do day rate pricing and things like that. What happened? Well, my biggest fear was I'd never travel internationally again to run workshops. My first client was an international client.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was cool. And through relationships, so I was traveling to Singapore, Hong Kong, India, running leadership workshops. Podcast took off. Like I said, my favourite author flew me to France to run workshops with her. It was a blinder of her first year.
Amazing. Walk us through that trip to France. How did it come about?
Well, first of all, because it's like a high-end fashion luxury client, you're like, what do I wear to the workshop? She actually asked me and she was like, I don't know if you'd be interested. But if I fly you to Paris, I'm like, of course. Yeah. So, and what was so great about it was we're running workshops based on her book, Pivot. So her name's Jenny Blake. She wrote a book called Pivot. And that was the book that changed everything for me when I was hating my job here.
Right.
Like I was not getting opportunities at my job. I was feeling very disengaged, had that sort of feeling in your stomach when you walk into the office. Then I read her book and I realised, okay, there's some things here that I can do and I can switch my approach. And so her book was the Bible for me enjoying work again. So the fact that I got to deliver it with her in an amazing city, content that I hand on heart loved and worked for me, it was like a triple threat of awesomeness.
Yeah, incredible. So coming out of that, like how did that propel you forward for the rest of the year?
Well, I just think how could it get better than this?
Yeah.
Really, how does it get better than that? And so what it reminded me of, Jenny also told me this quote by David Whyte, a poet, and he says, that which you can plan is too small for you to live. And what I realised is that my intentions were actually quite small. I just want to meet my income targets. I'm happy to work the same hours. So I thought, if I could get this Paris trip, what else is possible? And then I just started having the confidence to test things.
Yeah.
I call it like constructive delusion. I even did it today on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
I put out this post around just running some crazy events around the world because I want to do it selfishly.
Yeah.
But if you can just have that confidence and other people buy into the idea.
I love constructive delusion. I was actually talking about it yesterday. I framed it as more that I don't necessarily think about the bad things that could happen, nor do I really think about the best possible outcome. But a lot of the time I just think about the general opportunity and I want to move towards that.
Yes.
And I think that's something that differentiates business owners from other people, because my wife a lot of the time thinks, you're crazy. Like, you haven't got this worked out. I said, I know, but there's opportunity that way. Like, I don't know. I might not know exactly how to get there, but there's opportunity there.
Yeah.
So, but I love that constructive delusion. I don't think we're delusional per se, but I like the idea of constructing something around it.
Yeah, I think it's more like I did this challenge. It was to run 2,020 kilometres in 2020. And so on New Year's Eve, I was like, I'll do that. I was constructively delusional because I was like, okay, that's 5.5 Ks a day. Great, I can do that. What I didn't consider, this is the delusion piece, was if I miss one day, I've got to run 11K the next day. Like, and it's kind of like this whole, sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
We actually don't want to know what it takes to do it because you wouldn't do it.
No, that's true. And that's focused on the doing, isn't it, as opposed to the outcome. So you had a podcast, you're growing your podcast, you're growing your business. Where did most of your business come from?
So initially, there's sort of 3 buckets I think business comes out from. So craft is how good you are at running the thing, like doing the craft, the service business. Connections are the people that you know. And then content is, I think, that original public thinking and the strategy on all those platforms, all the social platforms. I think it's a combination of both, a really killer combination actually of everything, of all 3 buckets working well. So if I was to get a gig, I wanted to deliver it in an outstanding 11 out of 10 way, so I'd get called back for more work. But it was really the combination of connection and content. So you put content out, and LinkedIn is my platform. You're driving a narrative. I use it as an experiment of ideas.
Yeah.
And people then either buy into it or they want to talk about it. It initiates a conversation. So my goal is always just to try to get a conversation with someone.
Experiment of ideas. Unpack that a little bit more for me.
I don't take LinkedIn seriously at all. Like, I've got so many friends. One of my great clients in New Zealand, she's like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this post. I'm like, just post it. Like, it is, you got to have, I just see it as being fearless. I don't really care about being judged on LinkedIn. That's a big barrier for many people, is the judgment on that platform. How have you been judged on there? Like, what's your actual experience? I'm sure I have. Yeah. They just don't openly comment or message me. Yeah. They just probably ignore me.
Well, it hasn't seemed to matter, though, because years on, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what is there? I mean, I don't, it hasn't impacted me at all, to be honest.
LinkedIn's been a bit of a barrier to me, funny enough. Like, I'll get on TikTok or other platforms. But because I lived on LinkedIn as a recruiter in professional services, representing very high-end clients, the kind of LinkedIn me has been a certain way. Yes. And I even get, like, Slav talks to me all the time. She's like, you don't sound like that. Don't sound like that on LinkedIn. I said, I know, but it's almost automatic that that's the LinkedIn persona. It's not how even I want the LinkedIn persona to be. You just get used to turning up in a certain way. And I see people who, like yourself, turn up on LinkedIn just as yourself, doing so much better, because that's your true self anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, when I started off, it was like writing a university assignment on there.
Yeah.
Using like really professional words. Now it's like, how would I say, would I actually, the litmus test is, would I say that to you over a coffee? Would I use that word? No. Okay, that goes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the filter I've been trying to put through as well, because you have to. But I think you need to get to a point as well where, I had to get to the fuck it point, and it's like, well, I'm not getting the traction I want anyway, so like, just be who you are, because people can see that, and that's what works on other platforms. Exactly. It's not even what works. It's just like, it's tiring to try to do it through a corporate lens all the time.
Well, a lot of people are like, so the best cut through even with videos sometimes is when I'm just outside with greenery in the background, or it's not at my desk, because people are watching in their cubicle, or wherever they're working, and they actually want to see something. That's the pattern interrupter. Yeah.
We want to experience things. Like, that's taken us out of, where we're at that point. And, that's why, content on LinkedIn. So I guess that's really interesting as a strategy. What does that mean for you in terms of LinkedIn, on how often you post and what you actually create?
I'd love to say that I have months of content in the bank. It's basically just on the day if I'm feeling it. And what I'm thinking about. And so my day sort of kicks off with like either a run or a walk, or I'll wake up with an idea. And I love words. I love alliteration. I love catchy phrases. Like the other day I did a post. I fell asleep. Everyone's talking about influence. And then I thought of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I thought, it'd be really fun to write How to Lose Friends and Influence No One.
Yeah.
And, within 5 minutes, I was like, what would you have to do to kind of really tick everyone off? Just wrote it, posted it, and that's my strategy. It's when I've had pre-batched content and I've posted it at a certain time, it hasn't really landed. I don't know. I don't want to be woo-wooey, but it just doesn't come across with that sort of natural energy.
Yeah.
But to get started, I want to share this because I think when I first started on LinkedIn back in 2019, we had a LinkedIn pod and we did that for a few months. Right. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'd post religiously at 7 a.m. So that trained the habit of like observing and finding content.
Yeah.
As opposed to, because the worst thing you can do is wake up and think, what value can I provide someone else?
Yeah.
There's like a massive block.
Yeah.
But if you just start noticing things and you think, okay, I've got a few notes in my phone, post this Thursday, engage with other people, that's what helped me build my audience very early on.
Yeah.
Don't do it now. I don't need to, but...
I love the notes on the phone. I do the same thing with notes on the phone.
Cool.
And so for me, I'll listen to podcasts. Generally, I'm always listening to something, and then write a note on the phone and then refer to that when I feel, okay, I need to And sometimes it's organic and it's just like, I've got to say this today because I heard this really great thing or share this great thing. But it's also good to have those notes for those times when you don't have it.
That's right. Yeah.
So your podcast, tell me about how that's helped develop both your relationships and I guess the way people view you in the industry.
Podcasting is everything. You know this, Mike. You're a big fan of podcasts. It is single-handedly, it's been the biggest pillar of growth of everything. Relationships, my confidence, my communication skills. When you're hosting a podcast, that's like facilitating a group discussion.
Yeah.
You're leading this. I remember writing a list of like my dream guests for my podcast and thinking this is, again, it's constructively delusional, but I'll write it down. You know, Julian Treasure, my favorite TED Talk. He does how to talk so that people want to listen. He was guest like number 12.
Right.
You know, this is like in 2019 when podcasting still, you know, it's a very different game now.
Yeah.
But my podcast was called First Time Facilitator. That's who I was. And so people were buying into that identity. And what has it done for me in terms of my career and even how people perceive me is that it put me on par with people like Julian Treasure and other authors, which is just bizarre. Because I'm adding no content. I'm just interviewing them, being curious, asking the questions that my listeners want me to ask.
Yeah.
But then over the show, as the show evolves, first 100 episodes were all about how do you deliver a workshop and do it well. And then the second, if you listen to 100 to 200, my interest has changed to how do you market your workshops, how do you run a facilitation business. So it's been my personal journey that's been documented.
Yeah, that's cool that you've leaned into that. And to be honest, I kind of felt a little bit detached from my podcast for some time. Not that I wasn't unhappy with it. It's just it wasn't as personal to me. And this year I've tried to reframe it and speak with more business owners and focus on that because it's what I am more interested in as well. And it's funny, you need to sometimes give yourself permission for that evolution. And we all do it I talk about in branding all the time. Like your business brand is always evolving. It should be getting better and evolving. And we're allowed to evolve our content as well.
Exactly. Like we grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, growing up. So let's talk culture because obviously you help businesses build better cultures. But how do you diagnose when they've got a problem?
Yeah. I think the real problem is when people come to me and say, I've got a culture problem, but then you ask about performance. So it's really about performance. At the end of the day, for any business owner, it's about, because you can have a great culture and still be poorly performing, right? So that's something you got to find, like what the root causes of this. Some of them, there's micro symptoms and things that I sort of will look for. Sometimes when I work in construction sites, if I'm going in on the first day, I look for observable behaviour because culture is what behaviour is being reinforced or not. And so I'm even looking at things like, punctuality. Is a supervisor asking the team questions? What's the level of engagement like? Are shirts tucked in? Like just honestly, like even just from the first 5 minutes, that's a micro signal of where this culture is. Body language, where they're standing, all that sort of stuff. Virtually, it's quite interesting because there's also micro signals as well that you look for, but sometimes it's really hard if you work with a business that is virtual and you ask some questions. Everyone has a different perception of someone else. And so it really is about what is the observable behaviour, linking that to performance, to diagnose like what is the root cause here. And sometimes within businesses, a lot of people don't leave businesses, they leave their managers.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, a big organisation and there's like quite a few people are leaving in a certain department, that's sort of an indicator of what's going. That's where I sort of would investigate. Yeah. Those are a few things.
Okay, and so business recognises they've had departures and they may have a problem. How do you go in and fix it?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about exit interviews, and then I like the stay interviews, like why are you staying here?
Okay, so, yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's kind of too late once someone has left. I mean, I'd love to get feedback on why that person has left. It might be other things outside of culture. It could be better opportunities, market conditions are better elsewhere, the autonomy and things like that. So you kind of want to figure that out. Sometimes it isn't, it might be a toxic person within the business. The sad thing is sometimes businesses tend to move people around as opposed to letting them go.
Yeah.
It is very difficult now, especially with psychosocial hazards that are coming in. Mental health is made the role of a leader very challenging. in terms of how do you monitor, make people accountable, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you work with leaders one-on-one on that mental health side? Obviously, your psychology background as well.
If I can use the psychology background to look for symptoms and to ask them questions, but I would always refer them to sort of a specialist as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Leanne comes in. What does it look like if I'm a manager? What kind of support can you provide?
Yeah. I'm working with a team actually for over a year now. And so they're a team within a massive business. And so it's many different things. So attending their meetings, working particularly with their general manager on a one-to-one level. So I do something called Leanne on Demand, which is kind of different. But a lot of the time, I know when I have a coach, I had my coach in my first year, we'd meet every 2 weeks. And I sort of would have to save my question for that meeting. And it was annoying. Like I want to know now.
Yeah.
And so I do like voice note coaching.
Okay.
And so she might say, hey, this has happened. Like, and we'll either voice note it or jump on a call. So it's help in the moment, kind of like an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Versus let's have, so advisory, but on demand is how I sort of would run it. And just asking your questions. A lot of the time, what I find fascinating about this, Mike, is like 90% of it is validating what someone already thinks they should do.
Right.
But they just need someone to say, you should do that.
Yeah.
Or give them permission.
So that's my question. Like, how business sees performance going down, what do they do about it? Like, what's the first step look like if they perceive that they may have a problem or they want to get better?
Yeah. So personally or with a team?
So if you're running a small business and you recognize that things could be better, like, where do I start?
Awesome. Well, I think I'd have a conversation with you, first of all.
Yeah.
Ask you some questions around, what do you think is going on? Where do you want to be? Like, what is your strategy? Sometimes there is a lack of clarity in terms of the direction that someone is going or where they want to go. Often as well, I say, like, we try to stop convincing people and lead with conviction. So often founders will want innovation or they want accountability, but they're not role modeling those behaviours themselves, and they're the strongest beacon of how anyone else is going to react.
Yeah.
You talked about hierarchy before. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. We tend to look at the way people, we look at acceptable behaviour levels by looking up the chain in any business. So the founder is the beacon of that, and what they live, what they say doesn't actually matter. It's what they're doing and their behaviours. So I would start there. But also just, talking to a few people, getting a cross-section in terms of feedback and bringing people in together, depending on whether they need that clarity on strategy. Maybe it's more about understanding what communication is and looking at communication protocols. That can be another thing. It really depends. And sometimes it could be something as simple as, this person is a risk, you should get rid of them.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the context, but I'm not afraid. Like, my default isn't let's do workshops or let's drag this on. It's what can we do to stem that.
So where do the workshops fit in to that then? Because you go through a process and you're diagnosing, okay, this is something you can work on, and then it goes into workshop phase to help that? Yeah,
again, that depends. A lot of the time it's on communication. So I like to start with strategy if that hasn't been established already. Because what strategy is, it's a framework in which decisions are made. So often when we talk, this is linked to culture, a big thing that can drive people away is a lack of autonomy. Being micromanaged, and that's because a clear strategy and guardrails have not been set at that level. It's a great way to start there, get the clarity, and then you sort of weave in, right, what are the behaviours that we need? What are the behaviours that are required to drive this forward? And that's something that you then bring people around for. Like, okay, so this is the beacon, this is the North Star. What, at this level, what needs to be done to do that? What does that look like every day? How are we going to reinforce that, hold each other accountable for that? Does the cadence and drumbeat of meetings need to shift on this? That's the type of work we do. So that's the process side of workshops. Workshops can also be the training side. So training in how to be a better person at hosting these meetings, so there's two sort of elements.
So you mentioned the marketing element of it. And is that more from an employer brand perspective to be seen to be this type of organisation?
No, it can be. But I think even within businesses, it's hard to get attention. Right? So a lot of people, when they're driving change, they're like, here's the strategy, go forth and implement. It's like, no, you've got to launch that thing. You've got to market the heck out of it. You've got to make it exciting.
Got to bring people along first, and then they'll sell it for you internally.
And I often say, like, rather than stop trying to get, everyone talks about buy-in, it's like get pre-orders instead.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's too late if you're trying to get buy-in.
Yeah.
Because this was my mistake when I worked internally is I would create something and I'd be like, ta-da. And they're like, we didn't want this. Like, we didn't want a new leadership program.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great idea.
It's exactly the same with marketing. Hey, it's exactly the same as the market. We think, and I've done this countless times. I've done this recently when I'm like, yes, this is a solution. I've gone and created it. Then I've launched it as a free lead gen or something. And then afterwards, I've realized you've just made something more complicated than it needed to be. Actually, this is what the client wants. They don't want this PDF. They just want you to do the work. It was a classic thing. And I'm like, okay, what's the learning? Well, it was good. I put it all together. It was fun. But it was another case of, not necessarily, if you build it, they won't necessarily come, Yeah.
No, they won't. And there's a lot of wasted effort in businesses not valid. And this is why I love the lean approach, right? Even with my book, it was like validate the concept before you do anything else.
Yeah.
Get those pre-order, get people interested. Yeah.
How do you like to validate?
So with my book, I had an idea. So there was a book called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, and I just loved how niche it was, like how hyper niche it was. And I thought, what about a 2-hour workshop? And I liked the idea, but I'm not my own market. So I actually just launched it to my email list as a webinar. Hey, I'm running a webinar on how to create a 2-hour workshop, and it costs $150 US. That was like the highest selling webinar I did to my email list.
Yeah.
So that validated
cool.
the book. While it forced me to create content, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So walk us through writing your own book. Obviously, great idea, in line, but why did you do that after you've already done all this other stuff?
I know.
You're already rolling.
I know. I know, right? Like I asked myself the same question because I've got 200 podcasts on this. I've got the amount of content I've got about workshops. Surely no one needs a book about it, right? It's been fascinating actually sitting today. The amount of doors this book has opened is insane.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, write a book, and I'm like, yes, write a book. I would completely hand on heart say that. So why did I do it? When I look at my strategy personally for a business, I think about identity first. So who do I want to be in 12 months? And I just wanted to be an author. And I don't even care what the book is about. I just want to be an author.
Yeah.
I just want to have that title. And so my friend called it, instead of a low-hanging fruit, it was a low-hanging watermelon. 200 podcasts. Like you talk about this relentlessly.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book version 1 in 52 days.
Right.
I was going to a conference in California, and I was like, I am not going without a book. So I went to California, I had a local publisher print and deliver 50 copies of my book, version 1 there, to get feedback on it. And at the conference, there were 4 different books, and I was just watching my book, and the cover and everything, it flew off. People just took it. So that validated the front cover, the title. Yeah. Then I came back, and so by pre-orders, I had a whole writing community that provided feedback on the book. I was looking for a value to word ratio.
Right.
What I mean by that is I want every second page to be bookmarked.
Okay.
Or highlighted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that really cut down the volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you frame it was that because of the types of books you like to consume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and even the type of workshops I want to run.
I love books like that, 156 things to X, Y, and Z, and they're literally 2 pages per thing. But I can absorb a couple at a time and then actually remember it and refer back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want it to be like, this is the book you pick up when you run and people were asking on my Flipchart Facebook group, how do you run a 2-hour workshop? This is the book. You want it to be, it's the prescription for something. When someone asks that question, this is the book. And so...
What do you think it opens more doors?
People don't listen to podcasts like we think. I mean, everyone, I just love podcasting.
Yeah.
I'm so biased. Some people don't. Some people want the information in a format like that.
Credibility.
Don't know, the authority piece.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it is packaged in a different way that you could not do in any other medium in terms of everything is, it's just in a linear way.
So thinking about workshops and I guess facilitating more broadly, what do we generally get wrong? What are some of the key bits to think about if you're out there running workshops or facilitating yourself?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to begin with the experience in mind. So the number one thing I used to think that these are all my mistakes, was I was asked to run a workshop. My first step was I'm going to open PowerPoint. that was the immediate next step. And then it's like heading, bullet points. I'd have probably 2 screens open, cut, paste. It just took forever to design something, and it was based on that. And so, without getting too technical, content is like a rational objective. We're going to give you the skills and knowledge, but we have that information. So 1980s, 1990s, even early 2000s, great, you needed the information. Nowadays, you don't need it's not the information people are after, it's about the experience.
Right.
And I think that's what you got to start thinking about. Like, what type of experience do you want to... you're doing this with this podcast.
Yeah.
A relaxed, great environment, right?
Yeah. And that's how I think about brand, to be honest. Like, from the perspective for clients, what's the actual experience? It's not your logo or your colors. What does it feel like to be a client of yours? What does it feel like to walk through the door? What does it feel like to have a discussion?
Yeah.
What's that? And that has to then represent in how you look and feel.
Yeah. So that's number one, is that experience. Second thing I'd say is incorporating contrast, particularly in virtual workshops. So a lot of people, again, myself, made this mistake of like, you just share a screen and talk to it. You just got to incorporate contrast. That's how you win attention. So share a video, run a discussion, just look at your run sheet and see what other elements can I incorporate here to bring this to life.
Yeah.
Not just relying on the one source.
So from Brisbane, Australia to an international business, how do you manage that international side? And I guess, has it just been the nature of your content that's opened up those opportunities?
Yeah, good question. I think so. And I think because podcasting is global, 80% of my business is international.
Right.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad. I feel I've neglected Brisbane. I've never actually hosted a proper public event in Brisbane.
That's funny.
It's crazy.
Well, look, most of our clients aren't here either, to be honest. Like, there's something about being here where people, don't value it as much.
I agree. Like,
it's weird.
It's postcode rule.
Yeah.
Like, you're more valuable in other postcodes.
Even when I used to, before this business, when I was a recruiter, and I'd come up to Brisbane and, when I was just flying in and out, you'd get many more meetings than when we moved up here. Oh, he's here all the time. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think so. So I think that the international side, I think it's because I was lucky enough to come from an international business. So for me, those doors are already open. Some people have that as a barrier. Like, I can't get international work, but virtually, it's super simple.
Yeah.
My accountant doesn't love it that much because she's got to reconcile all these different accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And so in terms of developing who you are and what you put out there, how much introspection do you have about that?
A lot. Very self-absorbed. But I think because I am the brand.
Yeah.
And I think early on, like, where my content wasn't getting cut through was back to that conversation. I wasn't being myself. Even if you're 5% off who you are, it doesn't get the cut through.
Yeah.
So it's about being confident in who you are and being okay with it. I think that's developed by increase in self-worth as well, and just seeing myself as a peer to everyone and not being subordinate to anyone.
Yeah.
And that's just come from my mentor, Alan Weiss, just repeatedly shoving that down my throat about... he even talks about, he doesn't care about feedback sheets or anything. He's like, I've gone in there, I've done a great job, and I'm out. Like, he's so fearless. He's kind of like New York fearless.
Yeah.
I'm not at that stage yet, but that has really helped build my confidence. And I think that drives everything. Pricing, who you approach, all of it.
So as a solopreneur, like, you are on your own, and you mentioned you like the group dynamics. Yeah. How do you fill that in for yourself to get, more enjoyment out of what you do?
It's cute because a lot of my clients see me as part of the team. I know that's probably not, I'm there as an expert sort of third party, but I do get that excellent atmosphere. I've worked with a client, a Brisbane tech client actually, on their conference for the last, 5 conferences. Now I really feel embedded as part of it. So I get that buzz every now and then. I have a lot of friend tours around the world. That's how I keep it up. Voice notes on WhatsApp.
Okay.
So a ton of consulting friends, different time zones, and I make sure that I keep those connections in touch. From time to time, I'll join masterminds and things like that. But a lot of my job is very social. Like, I'm jumping on group calls all the time. So I'm getting that.
Yeah. If anything, having a rest sometimes.
Oh, massively.
Yeah. And how do you deal with that overwhelm factor because it can be real when you're the center piece?
I don't know if I deal with it really well.
Yeah.
I definitely hype myself up before any big event. My husband gets the brunt of it.
Yeah.
Because I'll get home and I just don't want to talk.
Yeah.
I don't. I want to Yeah, so I don't know if I'm the best at answering that question in terms of what I do. Running is great for me just to consolidate the ideas. I do journal, but I know that my energy is the most important thing when I show up to a group as well. So getting a good night's sleep, eating healthy, all of that is part of it.
How do you think your training in psychology helps with that?
It's the group dynamics piece and seeing what is actually going on here, and all the different biases that we have and how you can use them to your advantage.
Right.
It's kind of like manipulation, but when you're a facilitator, you're manipulating an environment in a certain way. Even where people are sitting, are you raising or dropping the level of certainty a group has? You can manipulate that. How are you using status?
But for yourself personally, how do you see the wood for the trees? Because I think it's all well and good, but it's a hard thing personally.
Yeah, it is. And I think I'm very hard on myself. But I like to use that as it makes me better.
Yeah.
But I honestly do think it's linked to self-worth. And because I think originally I thought, okay, my value is in all the resources I can pour onto a group, all the content, expertise and everything else. Now I've learned, and through one of my favourite authors, again, Michael Bungay-Stanier, he talks about lazy leadership and I talk about lazy facilitation, where it's like you're there to set up a conversation and a model and a process, but it's the group that has to also do that work. So in terms of using my own psychological tools on myself, it's self-talk.
Yeah, okay.
The self-talk piece. And almost like, ramping myself up for a netball game and getting in that zone. I do it I have a playlist for getting in the mood. I just say great things to myself.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's interesting how you frame your self-talk and the different things that we all kind of use. So you've been an author, you're a podcaster, international business. What does the future hold?
I want to write more books. I just love that process.
Yeah.
More books. I want to keep challenging what's possible in my business. I'm doing a lot of really great collaborations with people that I thought would never even respond to my email. So like Michael Bungay-Stanier and I are doing a great rooftop event in Brisbane. I'm now doing a fortnightly talk show with Alan Weiss, who was like the godfather of consulting.
Right.
So the first time we had a conversation, I didn't sleep the night before. It was at 6 a.m. I was so nervous. And now over 4 years, we've become great mates. And now doing a show together, which is crazy. But awesome.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm interested in how you've broken down those barriers to ask that question. Clearly, the podcast helped because you got to get guests on, so you're asking people all the time. But I must say, I've got a list of people that I haven't asked. So how do I, help me, please, Leanne? How do I move to start asking those people that I've felt like reluctant to, or I'm a, and I'm talking like, how have you got through that barrier yourself?
The different people has been different approaches. I think one is just backing yourself and just sending the email. Using social proof is a good one. So once you get, I got Julian Treasure as a guest, very prominent TED speaker. That gives me leverage to invite other people. So you're sort of social leveraging up is one way of doing it. What does Gary Vee talk about? Left hook, jab, 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 left hook. So like, on their content, just be noticeable, comment on things and sort of build that up. But I would just, shoot a video, send a voice note and just, people want to be asked, to be honest. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. Well, I never asked you for years and I wish I had because, you get, sometimes you think, and this was part of the framing of who's the right kind of, and who, so it's interesting, and that's what I've been trying to work through. No, ask the people that you actually want to talk to on the show.
We've got this recorded. I think you're going to play it to yourself every morning.
No, I know.
A ritual. I love it.
But and so more books. What do you look forward to most? As the last question.
Travis Chappell.
Yeah.
And, he does that event. It's called Cool People, Cool Places. I would look to. I honestly love what I'm doing at the moment. I don't know if I'd change anything. I just want it to sort of just improve it, maybe expand its reach. My ultimate business. If I was looking at an ultimate business model, it's like I just want to get paid to think and speak. That's it. Like that's why posting as myself is so important, because I'll repel people that don't want it, but attract the right people as well. So I think I've got a nice balance at the moment in terms of I've got time to, for my family, for exercising, for travel. I can travel and do my job, but I don't know what else like I'm an author, great.
Yeah.
It's just more of, making it, solving problems for clients in an interesting way. That's what really drives me.
Yeah, cool. Well, Leanne, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for this lovely interview, Mark. It's been so much fun.